This Advent evening now, we will have our Claudia sharing with us her reflections. Claudia.
Are we okay to go, Beth?
Yes, yes, Claudia, please.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll begin with a reading that we do at our winter solstice ceremony every year, and then go into the homily. And so the sun has set in the west, lying down in a snow-white bed to rest. And once again, we have begun our journey into the longest nights, even though we are not ready. No matter how great our resolve to prepare for this great and holy night, we are never ready. We yearn for another week, another day, time to take the time to be still, still enough to receive the light. But here we find ourselves, and suddenly we realize that there is no preparation necessary to receive the gift of light, other than our own longing to live our lives in beauty and loving all of creation. Loving the fox who is invisible in the shadows, loving the hawk who cries out for joy because he can ride the wind, loving the tree which lives a lifetime in one place, and the river which is constantly moving, loving the moon which lights the long nights, and her sons and daughters, the stars who look down on us and guide us, loving the ancestors who came before us, whose image we have never seen, but whose face we see in our own mirror. If there is any preparation to be done, it is simply to breathe. Take a breath and feel it whirling down your throat like wind down a chimney on a stormy night, all the way down into your lungs, sweeping your heart space as clean as a hearth being swept out before the new fire is lit. And there's one more very small reading from the winter solstice ceremony, since Jane is smiling. From the depth of winter earth, where the bones of our ancestors lie hidden, and a record of all that has ever been is stored, I call forth the memory of every kind word that has ever been spoken to surround us now and warm our hearts on the longest night. In a few short days, the domestic animals will have their day. Ox and donkey, dove and sheep will gather in the stable, but tonight, the wild creatures still hold sway. Let us see the world as they did and rediscover our own wild winter heart. We gather tonight in midwinter darkness. The earth has carried us once again on sacred pilgrimage round the sun to the great turning point of the year. To arrive at this moment, we rode through a dark, mysterious universe on a planet made of water. Yet we were barely aware that we were moving at all, unless we looked to the moon and stars dancing across the night sky. We have arrived at the still point of the year, poised between darkness and light. The daily progression of the sun across the sky has slowed. Instead of rising from a new spot every morning, it appears to stand still, casting long shadows through the trees for a few hours before slipping back down beneath the cover of darkness. It is into the stillness of this dream space that the light is reborn. Breathe deep and allow yourself to sleep beneath the covers of the winter night. Let the earth carry you like a sleeping child into the final Sabbath of our Advent journey. We are nearly there. Our destination is in sight just over the horizon, but we need not hurry. It's time to rest for a while and listen to the earth's soft whisper as we lie half asleep in the place between waking and dreaming. In the early darkness, our eyes turn naturally to the sky. Great telescopes have given us the awareness that our sun is only one among millions of other stars scattered across a seemingly endless cosmos. We are driven to explore the furthest reaches of this universe. We view images captured by telescope and satellite in wonder and awe, yet nothing we have found there has given us an answer to the two great questions. Who made us? And why are we here? Even though we now have some understanding of the mechanics of it all, we are no closer to understanding the why of it all than our most distant ancestors who lived in a world lit only by fire. Perhaps, connected to nature as they were, they actually understood more than we do. What fools we were to ask for knowledge when we could have asked for joy. Perhaps, instead of endlessly beating our heads against the wall of the great mystery, it's time to just let go and focus on a story we can actually understand. The story of a child being born. This is the season when the nativity story is told. I think we can all agree that even though we know where Jesus was probably born, the exact date of his birth has been lost to the ages. It wasn't until the 4th century that a decision was made to place his birth at the time of the winter solstice. Some say this decision was made for purely political reasons. They believe the church claimed the celestial event of the winter solstice as their own in order to lure people away from paganism. I like to believe, however, that even amidst the politics and machinations of the institutional church, that some dreamy mystic of a monk had the wisdom to realize that the light of Christ being born into the darkness of the world is a story perfectly expressed in the symbolism of the winter solstice. Christ came into the world to tell us a love story, to introduce into nature, which is so magnificent, yet sometimes so unforgiving, the story of an infinitely loving, infinitely forgiving presence at the heart of the universe. A God who loves us. The story of death and rebirth, growth and transformation is already present in nature. The ancient pagan traditions and rituals are firmly rooted in nature. Yet one crucial element is missing from the story they tell. Love and the forgiveness that makes personal growth and evolution possible. Even so, even with that missing piece, many of these ancient rituals and observances bring us into communion with nature so we can see the shadow of the Creator, which is evident throughout all of creation if we take the time to look for it. Christ was born in a stable, a cave carved out of the earth. the indigenous spirituality, which springs up out of the earth itself, was always the manger in which Christ was intended to be born. The early Celtic church understood this. The Irish monks lived and prayed as the Druids did in individual beehive cairns made of rocks. They lived and prayed in solitude, seeking to hear the soft whisper of God in their own time and in their own way. Like the Druids, these early monks were gathered in community, yet separate from one another, so Spirit could speak to them directly. They walked patterns on the earth as a form of prayer and contemplation, their path a reflection of the movements of the planets across the heavens, a practice which exists to this day. Jesus told us that the kingdom of God is within us. We are God's homeland, the place where the loving presence flowing through the universe lives and grows. We are the manger in which the light of God was always intended to be born. Long before the written word or even the spoken word, the word of God was written by the moon on the sea. Winter is the season when indigenous people all over the world tell their origin and teaching stories around the bonfire. Some tell stories of emerging from the earth and journeying across long miles before finding a place to take root. Others tell of traveling here from the stars. Many tell of great floods which covered the earth. All of these sacred stories are strangely suggestive of what we've learned about the formation of the cosmos by looking through those great telescopes. Before the world had scientists, it had poets, visionaries who somehow tuned into the story of creation stored deep within the memory of the living earth. These stories survived, preserved in oral tradition, even when the languages and spiritual traditions of the people were outlawed by governments and frowned upon by the institutional church. Both the Celts and the Native Americans were at one time forbidden from speaking their native tongue or practicing their religion. They were not the only ones. On the pueblos in the Southwest, there are sacred stories and rituals which have come down through hundreds of years, surviving in part because they were never written down. They were committed to memory with different clans and families, taking responsibility for learning different portions of the story, for the power within these stories to be revealed. Everyone had to come together to recite their own part. Tonight, December 18th, is in fact the first evening of Deshkwi on Zuni Pueblo, a sacred time of fasting and prayer that surrounds the winter solstice. Even in the dead of winter, Deshkwi is a time for planting. In the bitter cold of the desert night, a kind word is a seed we can plant in one another's heart that will take root and bloom in the coming year. During Deshkwi, people seek to resolve any differences which divide them and let go of anger, so unity is restored in the community. They believe that this inner work ripples out to the furthest reaches of the cosmos, to all sentient beings, restoring balance in nature so the rains fall in season and the harvest is plentiful. This is a bit of the ancient wisdom that the misguided church once sought to erase. One of the greatest mistakes the church has ever made, in my opinion at least, was attempting to cut itself off at the roots from indigenous wisdom. When the solstice and the nativity are allowed to stand side by side, each one magnifies the light of the other. The space in between the two is a thin place where, if only for a moment, we catch a glimpse of the mystery which lies just beyond our reach. More and more people today are turning to the traditions of Celtic Christianity, seeking in these older forms of contemplation and ritual a way to reconnect and heal our battered planet. What a moment of healing for the church it is that the door which has been so long shut to indigenous wisdom and tradition is opening once again. When I mention indigenous people, I am not referring only to Native Americans. All of us have a spiritual connection to a particular place on the earth, even though our physical tie to that far off land may long ago have been severed. I see a great longing in many people to have that connection restored. This is perhaps the reason so many people are actively reviving and even creating new rituals that are rooted in the cycle of the seasons. At one point in my life, when I was very young, I left the church behind. I closed the door. But not long after my son was born, I found myself drawn back into the Christian mysteries, led there by the act of giving birth. The presumably male gospel writers are largely silent on the subject of Mary. Her voice is missing. Her version of what happened seemingly lost. Yet any woman who has ever given birth can easily fill in the details. In traditional societies, men still go on vision quests to seek purpose and meaning in their lives. The women, or so I've been told, are excused from the self-inflicted discomforts of this exercise. This is not due to sexism, but to the understanding that surrendering to the powerful act of giving birth is all a woman needs to do in order to receive her vision. When a child emerges from the darkness of the womb, a powerful yet indescribable wave of love sweeps through her. In a moment, she knows that she would lay down her life to protect her child. Her heart is filled with love. This revelation is like nothing she has ever felt before. Her heart breaks open wide, and she is forever changed. Another great revelation comes when she realizes the depth of the love her child feels for her. Small children sometimes remember details of their birth, although they forget it all by the time they're 3 or so. Those little ones who try to tell us these memories in the simple words of a young child speak of a similar wave of love and even great joy when they see their mother for the first time after only hearing her voice in the darkness of the womb for 9 months. This is a story I can understand. When I despair of the world and doubt the goodness of the universe, I think of the great love that is awakened when a child is born and the open-heartedness we tiny human beings are capable of. And my belief in that infinitely loving presence at the heart of the universe is reborn. I think of the music of this season, the songs we sing, and the poetry we write, and my faith in the boundless creative energy we call God is renewed. In nature, we see the true nature of the Creator reflected in every aspect of their creation. Nature is beautiful, yet without mercy. The vast unfolding universe is magnificent, yet incomprehensible. Christ taught about the deeply loving and infinitely forgiving presence at the heart of this universe. I do not know if this love was always at the heart of the universe, or even in the heart of God. The story we find in the winter solstice, when we turn from a season of darkness in the direction of light, suggests a moment when the universe itself turned to light. An explosion of light and creativity was born in the dark vastness of the void and spread out over space and time where it is unfolding yet. Perhaps the nativity story, where light and love are born into the world, suggests that there was a moment when love was born into the heart of a continually evolving God. As any artist knows, the nature of the Creator is found within their creation. Rather than hiding from us, I believe that God is hidden in plain sight in the natural world, a soft shadow cast over all the earth. To connect through this world through seasonal ritual is to connect to the mystery of the vast creative energy we call God. In the New Mexican winter desert, I saw a manger much like the manger in which Christ is said to have been born. It was carved into a natural indentation in the soft rock, creating a soft cave closed on 3 sides and enclosed with coyote fencing on the 4th. It looked nothing like the medieval stables depicted in holy pictures, partly man-made, partly a natural cave. This was where the Navajo sheep were housed for the cold desert night. When I lived in Frijoli Canyon, an ancient cliff-dwelling site, for 2 months, I was left on my own, unsupervised every night. I'd walk out in the dark to the ruins and climb up into one of the caves carved into the cliff face hundreds of years ago. It was strangely warm in this cave, even on a late November night. Perhaps because it faced west and the rock face held the warmth of the sun. That was a new experience, yet predictable. The warmth, I mean. What was unexpected was the feeling of peace which came over me as I rested there deep within the earth. Traditional Navajos rise every day and make an offering of cornmeal to the east where the sun is rising, and they pray in thanksgiving for its light and the one who made that light. Allowing the cornmeal to slip from their hands and fall gently back to earth as they sing, their prayer creates a sacred space in the day to connect to the Creator. The Celtic peoples of Ireland and Scotland also had prayers they offered when they saw a new moon or greeted the morning sun. Perhaps they too made an offering, allowing a few grains of oats to slip from their hands as they prayed. These daily rituals, these folk rituals, are deeply empowering. Rather than having to depend on a priest to open a sacred door, the people were empowered to make the connection to spirit all on their own. I sometimes carried oatmeal with me as I hiked through the New Mexican wilderness, leaving a few grains here and there, not so much as an offering, but as a show of respect for the living spirit I felt flowing through all things out there, the shimmering energy we felt all around us in the rocks, the mountains, and the light of the sun. There are so few people living there compared to New England that the energy of earth and spirit comes through far more vividly. My elderly friend Kate said that it was an easy place to grow old in because she felt herself connected to the gentle energy flowing through all things there. It was so easy to imagine, she said, rising up out of her earthly body and becoming one with the beauty of the sunset or the millions of the stars that grace the night. To be conscious, yet without self-consciousness, rejoicing and at one with creation. With that comforting thought, I will take my leave and close with one final reading from our winter solstice ritual. It's a poem we write before doing the shepherd's dance, which Brother Elred once taught me. Candles in our left hand, we join in a circle beneath the stars, joined by our pinkies, and we dance on the frozen earth, looking up to the sky, then back at one another, thinking our love. Dark wonder of the Yuletide night, friends gather round the firelight. Candles in hand, we dance as one to banish the darkness and bring back the sun. Beneath the stars, our circle turns, while at the center, the good fire burns. Each one of us a spoke, we move as one to turn the year's wheel and bring back the sun. Too soon the moment passes by beneath the stars of the midwinter sky. But for a few fleeting moments, our hearts beat as one. With a love so strong, it can bring back the sun. Amen and good night.